Welcome to Bold Leaders, Actionable Solutions, a video series presented by Ellig Group and the Society for Human Resources Management, SHRM. I'm Janice Ellig, CEO of Ellig Group. We are a global executive and board search leadership and advisory firm with a 40-plus year track record of supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Johnny Taylor, CEO of SHRM, a global professional association of human resources professionals, with over 300,000 members representing nearly 120 million employees, joins me today in thanking all of you for taking the time to consider how senior executives and board directors can accelerate gender and racial diversity in America's boardrooms. Today's program is one of 6 that we plan to release in the coming weeks based on a white paper of the same name published in the winter of 2020. Earlier this year, Johnny and I were honored to host an impressive group of experienced CEOs and corporate board members to talk about boardroom diversity and share candid insights around challenges and potential solutions to enhance the composition of boards. With the help of an expert facilitator and the well-known Patty Sellers of Sellers Eastern Media, we had a rich dialogue that resulted in the development of 9 actionable solutions that were captured in our white paper, Bold Leaders, Actionable Solutions. Our video series will bring to life the white paper, where CEOs and directors will share their insights with all of you. And that is what we are going to do today. To receive the paper, Bold Leaders, Actionable Solutions, simply go to our website, elliggroup.com, or email inquiries@elliggroup.com, and we will send you a copy. Today, Johnny and I are joined by 2 esteemed business leaders, Pat Russo and Stephan Tanda. Pat was previously the CEO of telecom giant Alcatel, Lucent, and currently serves on the boards of KKR, General Motors, and Merck, and chairs the board of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Pat has been a true leader in the expansion of boards to include more women and people of color, and we are fortunate indeed that she was willing to join us and share her perspectives about what has worked and what has frankly not worked in advancing board diversity. Stephan is the CEO of Aperture Group, an NYSE traded global leader in consumer dispensing, active packaging, and drug delivery solutions and services. He is also an independent director for Ingredion. I've had the pleasure of working with Stephan for some time, and I can tell you from experience that he is deeply committed to diversity, equity, inclusion at all levels of the company, including the board of directors, and we're grateful that he was able to join us today. In a moment, I'm going to be handing over the discussion to Nicole Sandford, who will be moderating today's webinar. She is the practice head for our board advisory and search practice globally for Ellig Group. But Johnny Taylor and I wanted to just set the stage with a few facts. And I'm going to start that off with looking at where is the S&P 500 boardroom today in terms of where the progress made and progress yet to be made. So when Catalyst first started tracking the number of women on boards in 1995, the percentage was 10%. Today, the end of 2020, it's 28%. That's 18 percentage points in 25 years, less than 1% a year. And globally, the US is number 18, behind countries such as South Africa, Germany, Italy, all ahead of us. We're number 18. We should be number 1. So progress is too slow. And these webinars are all about actionable solutions. And Johnny, I know you have a few comments that you would like to make.
Yes, thanks, Janice. And you can't disagree. There's a lot of work for us to do. I am hopeful and naturally an optimist so that I see the progress that we have made. For example, we know right now that the data tells us, we do this research at SHRM every day, 147 publicly traded companies and 1,276 directors are people of color or are racial and ethnic minorities. 50 directors from diverse populations with more than 275 hours of board experience are there. But what we know is while that is some progress, it's not enough, as Janice has said. And our research tells us that there are primarily three challenges. One is selection issues. We are uber selective, and the bar is set so high oftentimes for people who are from diverse populations. So that's one challenge that we need to confront. The second is we talk to the same candidates. It's amazing. I might get a call a month from someone about joining a board, but I have really highly uber qualified colleagues of mine who don't get any calls. So the same calls are going to the same people. So it's a challenge and an opportunity for us. And then finally, we've got to get past just talking about it, and we've got to take action. So those are the three things that our research is telling us increasingly, that if we're going to do something about it, we've got to address those three issues. How are we going to solve for it? Well, like we said, same candidate pool can't be used for every search. We've got to focus less on fit. Do I like the person? Do I get along with them? And more about their potential contributions. When we do see people joining boards, they don't get some of the key governance roles when they are appointed. So they're sitting on the softer committees. So it's an area that we think we have to be mindful of, even when people are appointed, people of color are appointed to these boards. And then in the search process, and I'm understanding now from Janice and Nicole and others that it's not as much as it used to be, but in the past, there was a requirement that diverse candidates, or all candidates, have prior board service. Right? If that's a requirement and we knew that we had underrepresentation, then it's not going to get any better if we continue to require that. And finally, last but certainly not least, is the only way we're going to solve the board diversity issue is to address executive diversity, because that is oftentimes the pipeline from which we recruit.
Thank you, Johnny and Janice, for that context. Very helpful as we start our conversation. And thank you, Pat and Stephan, for joining us today. We're excited to have the time with you, and we have a lot to cover, so we're going to jump right in. And Pat, I'm going to start with you. Your board career is so impressive. You've served on so many iconic boards, and really you were a trailblazer that so many of us have been inspired by. And I'm just going to ask you, I mean, you've seen a lot of different versions of board diversity and initiatives around board diversity. Some have worked well, others have not. But this feels different to me, and I'm really interested in hearing from your perspective. Does it feel different to you? And if so, what's different?
Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate those comments. I do think it is different now. And I think it's a combination of things contributing to it. One, and it's all about the mores. I think there is more experience with what diversity looks like and the value that you actually see and experience as we've made this progress, admittedly, to Janice's point and Johnny's point, not far enough. So I think there's more enlightenment. I think there's more conviction today. I think there's more accountability. I think investors are holding boards accountable. I think boards are holding themselves accountable. And so I feel like there's more ownership and conviction about accelerating progress.
Thanks. That's very helpful. It does feel different for those of us who've been around boards for a while. We're seeing a real shift that we were missing in the past. But Stephan, this is not a new concept for you. You've always been very vocal about your support of diversity, equity, and inclusion at every level of the company. And I'd just like to hear a little bit more from you about how you've seen that translate into competitive advantage, sustainable competitive advantage, as you've made progress on your diversity goals.
Thanks, Nicole. Really appreciate participating in this, discussing this great topic. Aperture Group is a very global business, and although we are supplying majorly brand owners and pharma companies in the B2B fashion, the ultimate decision makers on our products are the consumer. And the consumer is mostly the woman of the household. So understanding the consumer is extremely important for us. And of course, women are the backbone of the business community and society at large. So driving towards gender parity for us has always been not only good business, but a business imperative. Of course, being in consumer-oriented products, they are very different around the world. So we also need to have a good dose of regional expertise, local expertise, and that really goes from the board on down. So after today is made up at the board level of 40% of women, and every single committee is chaired by a woman. One of them is Hispanic, one is French, one is Dutch, Greek, and one is American. We also have an Asian male. And also the executive team is now composed of 40% of women. So over the period of time, what I've really observed, what has changed is that the conversations have changed. The conversations, whether it's in the executive team or in the board, are much more thoughtful. Believe it or not, behaviors have improved a lot in the boardroom. Conversations are much more inclusive, making sure everybody's voice is heard, or at the minimum, they are not exclusive anymore or normative in their language. So everybody's on their best behavior. And that really brought a balance to the conversation and instilled the focus on the facts and contributed to a more holistic understanding of business issues, but also our organization at large and the organizational dynamics. So in addition to that, of course, as you get a more diverse leadership team at the top and the very top, there's much more interest in perpetuating the goodness, more talent-oriented discussions, more mentoring, and I found the board to be much more willing to engage in helping us increase our diversity further and mentor the talent that comes up.
Thanks, Stephan. Much of what you said proves out what we've seen in study after study, and it's just really encouraging to hear that as you've improved the diversity across all levels of the company, you've seen the advantages that we've heard about for some time. I'm going to ask that we switch gears now, talk more about the white paper, which of course was the output of a really outstanding conversation that we had a few months ago. And we came up with 9 solutions, and we're going to talk about 2 of them today. The first one was around opening the aperture. And Johnny talked a little bit about this as a sort of, fishing in the same pond and stopping that default to the same group of people over and over again. From a practical standpoint, I think this was bound to happen because if you're going to look for diversity, you can't just look for sitting CEOs. And you will have to, as Johnny said, consider folks who have not been on a board before. And Pat, you have a lot of experience here. You've reached down and pulled up lots of women and diverse candidates into the boardroom for their very first time. I'd like to hear from your perspective about those experiences and what you've learned and any wisdom to share with people as they get ready to perhaps do that for the first time.
Look, one of the things I have learned over my years of experience, and I have chaired a number of governance committees, I sit on a number of governance committees, and obviously chair Hewlett Packard Enterprise. But one of the things I've learned as I have had the opportunity to recruit for boards and to help evolve boards. So when we're splitting a company, it's a great opportunity. You have to staff the boards of 2 companies. I've done that twice with HP and then again with Alcoa. And look, what I have found is there's no can't. I don't accept I can't find candidates. I think that's a very lame excuse, quite frankly. I think if you are sufficiently convicted about the importance of a diverse board, you will open the aperture, you will be more open-minded, understanding what are the real skill sets and experiences as opposed to what's the title that a person has. And so, for example, on a couple of the boards on which I serve, we have at least 8 individuals who would be considered diverse. They are not all sitting CEOs or former CEOs. They come from different backgrounds and experiences, all of which are relevant to what the company needs. And so I just think there's lots of opportunity to move more rapidly. I think it's a matter of just doing it.
Well, that was really interesting. I'm wondering if Janice or Johnny have anything they want to add to that.
Well, I'll go because I, started it with this slow pace, 25 years and less than 1% a year. That's for women. And then women of color, men of color, that's even lower, right? So here we are, 28% women on boards. I think maybe the number is about 5 or 4% women of color. Why is it so slow? You are true believers. You are moving the needle. Why are boards not embracing this more and saying every other opening should be filled by a woman or a person of color?
I think there are some potential barriers that get in the way. One being, well, they haven't had public company board experience. Well, you know what? Every CEO that's a new CEO has never been a CEO before. And so that's not a reasonable or explainable rationale for why you wouldn't bring someone on a board. There are plenty of opportunities to provide training and development and perspective to new board members, and smart, quality people catch on really quick about understanding the difference between managing and governing. So I think that's one thing. And the second thing is, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think you have to focus on what experiences and skills are needed, not what is someone's title. And when you open that aperture, there are plenty of places to go and look to find diverse candidates who meet those skills and experience demand.
Yeah, from my side, I fully agree with Pat, of course. And I think sometimes there is almost a hesitation to insist on the right outcome. And so often people say, well, it's hard to find the right person, or, we looked everywhere, and that is accepted. And frankly, in no other place in business do we accept that. And we all know from our own experience that it's not true. Yeah, you may have to work a little harder, turn over more rocks, but if you know that no outcome that's off the target is acceptable, you will go and do that, as opposed to go the easy route. So I think also at the board level, to insist on the outcome is important, and for some reason it's seen as bad etiquette in some boardrooms to insist on the outcome here, and it really shouldn't be.
A question that I'd ask, and it's a little bit of the elephant in the room, is oftentimes these numbers, especially when you come down to racial and ethnic diversity, they can be, because we've done better with women and we've done better with people of color. I mean, the country just engaged in a pretty serious racial reckoning. And when we really break it down to African Americans or Blacks, these numbers are abysmal. It's not 1% a year, it's worse. So I would, I'd love to ask both of you, what can we do? Again, it's not either or, but if we look at sort of where the underrepresentation is, it's pretty bad when it comes to African American and Black candidates specifically.
I would go back to Johnny. I'll take a crack at this, and then Stephan, obviously, I'm sure you have some views. Look, I go back to kind of the fundamentals, which is you open the aperture, right? You open your willingness to look more broadly and more deeply. And I don't think we can just rely on search firms. I think boards in this case have to reach out to national organizations of Black executives, national organizations of Latino executives, national organizations of Hispanic executives. There are places where executives of people of color are part of. And how about identifying through them additional candidates? How about going to existing Black directors and saying, give me 10 names, right? Give me 10 names, give me 5 names. So, I mean, I just think it's a matter of working harder, reaching further, going deeper, and being willing to bring people in that may not have exactly the title or have had prior board experience, because I think we have all in our careers who have led talent and been responsible for development. I can't tell you how many times I have been pleasantly surprised at how people just step up. They step up, whether it's first-time CEOs, whether it's people into executive positions. Give them an opportunity and they will step up.
Yeah, it's very hard to top that. Maybe I would just add is also professional organizations. We just onboarded the African American General Counsel, and I've been amazed the network she's come with. And it's a learning experience for me. I felt guilty. I was ignorant of some of these professional networks. So the second part is really committing yourself personally to broaden your own networks along the lines Pat outlined, because the learning journey never ends. And by widening the lens and picking up on the network from the people that you do have, and then it's almost like a snowball going down the hill, picking up speed. But you need to commit yourself, and you need to remain curious.
I do think this is a momentum as opposed to just a moment. I think there is a movement. I think it is changing. And so maybe even some of the conversations you have in your boardrooms, if you would, confidentially without naming who or what, but how is that changing in terms of what you're looking for, and to the point of skills, and going not just even to the C-suite, but somebody who really has that operational experience that will benefit you, but maybe they've worked with their board. How are those conversations changing? Because Nicole and I are seeing this in terms of our search practice. Certainly she is, and to the board she's working on.
Well, I think from my perspective, it is this continuous education and raising the awareness level and the curiosity level. In Aptar's case, the board felt, well, we're so diverse, all kinds of nationality, women, and I literally drove the conversation that, yes, through that lens, we're very diverse, but I need to tell you, through the U.S.-American lens, we don't seem diverse. The people just look at the Facebook page of the proxy and they say, well, there's something missing. And of course, my U.S.-American colleagues, I often have to educate, well, diversity is not just color, it's also international experience, having grown up in different parts of the world. But it's not either or. You gotta, as Pat says, broaden your aperture, widen your lens to bring every aspect into the boardroom. And that requires a conversation.
And I would add, Janice, as I reflect on maybe what's different, what I've seen over the last, few years is a greater attempt to marry the strategic direction of the company going forward with the relevant experiences and skills that are going to be necessary. I think that conversation enables greater diversity, because instead of, okay, everybody wants a sitting CEO, you get more focused on, look, we really need consumer technology expertise. We really need digital transformation expertise, as an example. And so I see more of a combination now of course, you want the general senior executive breadth and depth, but also more interest in some more specific areas. And so I think that creates opportunity. The only other thing I'll say that I'm hearing more of is a desire for generational diversity, is how I would characterize it. And I think that opens an opportunity to reach deeper into organizations than you might not otherwise to identify potential candidates.
May I ask Johnny a question? Because reaching out to different groups, Johnny, I mean, you've got 300,000 members, which represent over 116 million employees. It's incredible. What's your advice for boards in terms of, you started this off that way in terms of what they can do. But in terms of looking at different pools of talent, as Pat was saying, to different professional associations, executive leadership council, Hispanic groups, what would you say to that?
So it's interesting that Stephan, I'm going to piggyback on something he said, and thank you for that question, Janice. At the end of the day, sometimes the answer is sitting right there in your organization with your human resource executive. Remember, our challenge has been to diversify our executive teams all the way from the executives down to entry-level employees. So we are developing those relationships in ways that can really be useful to our colleagues who are looking to fill board spots. I can tell you now, rarely, again, a week or two passes where someone calls me. I just got a call from a Fortune 100 CEO saying, listen, you all do a really good job at finding diverse talent. Are any of those people that you placed or are interested in placing potential candidates for my board? And they don't have to be in HR, they might be legal. Many of us are interdisciplinary. So I've been a CEO, an HR person, a general counsel for global companies. So we can be, I think a lot of times the answer might well sit within your HR function, especially at your CHRO level. So SHRM is really focused on that, which is why we're partnering with the Ellig Group, because truly the work that you all do complements the work that we do in HR.
And can I just add, I think, you're talking about also building the pipeline. So there's how do we make progress? Obviously, making progress on boards today, tomorrow, next week, but there's also the how do we get more candidates? How do organizations become more diverse, as Johnny was just saying? And, I can remember back, this is 15 years ago, inside AT&T, going to the employee resource groups to identify candidates for potential job movement within the organization. So I just want to pile on to that idea.
Yeah, and thank you all for those comments. I think from my perspective, there's another factor here as to why things are different now. I mean, change is hard, and cultural change is probably the hardest change of all. There's a lot of fear there, but a lot of companies have had very positive experiences with their first director that they added, their first diverse director. And we hear all the time when we're doing a search, can you get me someone exactly like this person I just added, who has added so much value? And many times it's a diverse person. So I think that the success breeds success is what's driving this here too, is the fear is starting to dissipate. People aren't as afraid of bringing in diverse people who don't have a lot of board experience and are not CEOs. So maybe that's having an impact as well.
I couldn't agree more. And of course, it's the old adage of, I can't be what I can't see. Once you have one that can be seen, more will come. And just saying, hey, this is a good place to be because they pay attention. And more often than not, as I said, the diverse member is then also willing to take on mentoring roles, not only in the C-suite, but further down in the organization, and bring additional candidates to the table. So success begets success.
And Nicole, that's what I was referring to when you said kind of what's different. I do think that people are more enlightened about how this works and what kind of value and difference is made when you have more diverse perspectives sitting around the table. And I think as that grows, that creates more conviction. And then, with more conviction, there's more self-accountability. And, it's just a matter of getting that accelerated.
Stephan, any closing words or parting words?
There's no other area in our business where we accept an outcome that's completely off target. I mentioned the analogy. We've decided to build a plant in China. We hire a contractor. Contractor goes off and does their work, and a month later comes back and says, hey, it would be a lot easier to build that plant in Japan or in Thailand. We wouldn't even entertain the thought, yet often we have exactly that same result by analogy from a search consultant. So more often than not did I have to place a call and say, you did not understand the specification. This wasn't just a throwaway comment. It's not a nice to have. This is the specification. We covered a lot of the other topics, but I would say the building up the courage to remove board members, to have a good cadence of refreshing the board, maybe even term limits, although that's controversial. But every new spot that you open up is an opportunity to move the board in the right direction. So you really need to proactively refresh the board. And, you know, if you have a 10-member board, one should come off every year. And of course, that takes courage, but it doesn't happen by itself.
Thank you, Stephan. Pat, any parting words?
Look, I would just say that I have been a believer in diversity for years. I have worked hard at creating diverse teams, diverse boards, not because I think it's quote unquote right thing to do, because I think it's a fundamental business imperative. The more diverse viewpoints and the more diverse perspectives you have sitting around any table within any organization dealing with tough business problems, the better the debate and the better the business outcomes. So for me, it is just a fundamental imperative. And I think as boards, given that's where we're focusing, as 100% of the boards realize and become convicted about the importance of that diversity, I think we will be able to make accelerated progress.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. And Johnny, I'll hand it back to you to close.
Well, it looks like our time is up. Thank you to our esteemed panelists for your ongoing commitment to enhanced boardroom diversity. Our future progress depends largely, almost exclusively, on people like you stepping up and committing to change. And we are deeply grateful for your leadership. And to all of you joining us today, please come back and listen to the entire series of video interviews. We will explore a different set of the 9 recommendations in each video. So if you enjoyed today's discussion, view the others on the Ellig Group YouTube channel, accessible on the web pages of both the Ellig Group and the SHRM websites. And remember, you can obtain a copy of the white paper by emailing inquiries@Ellig Group. That is ELLIG Group. One final thank you to Patty Sellers at Sellers Easton Media and Davia Timon at Timon & Company for their support of this effort, which was critical to its success. With that, on behalf of myself and Janice, it's been our pleasure hosting you today. Goodbye until we meet again.